Hi, everybody. This is David Sereda from davidsereda.co. You can see my website down below my name here. So, tonight we're talking about the strange theory of light and matter, which is actually one of my favorite books I read by one of my favorite physics teachers, which is Richard Feynman, and um, and how it relates to consciousness, the human magnetic field, and everything. When you think of Doctor Strange, how many people have seen Doctor Strange and you don't know where the name Strange really comes from? Because it's all a play on words, right? Just like the Yod and I mentioned in the Hebrew is where Yoda comes from, and the Mandalorians are a spinoff on the Mandaeans, which are the followers of John the Baptist. And Doctor Strange, see, strangeness in physics means really that which is so strange that there's no way to mathematically quantify in any formula its strangeness, which is why in physics they call it strange. And it's really amazing that the winners of the current Nobel Prize in physics fall into that category. It's incredible how what was fringe science is now becoming mainstream. We can clearly see that everybody thought people who believed in UFOs were crazy. And now we have the United States military and the congressional hearing on UFOs. We have NASA, who has formed a whole research team into this phenomenon. And most of the pilots can tell you that they're not from this world. I mean, that's coming from the most experienced avionics experts in the world who fly the best planes. And so people who believed in that stuff were crazy, and now they're not. And now when you look at the Nobel Prize, let me see if I can share screen. And when you share screen, can you see this shows the Nobel Prize? Are you seeing
Yeah.
that? Okay. So this is a bigger deal than you can imagine. I mean, I followed Elaine Aspect's work for a very long time, over 25 years. And these guys won the Nobel Prize in physics for quantum communication. I have to understand, I made a film called Quantum Communication that got hacked on the internet and got over 50 million views, renamed Mind Science Kept Hidden. People renamed it whatever they could to steal the film. And people were crazy about my film, which is now, you can go to Gaia TV and you can see it in proper quality there. You can see part one and part two of quantum communication. So this is incredible what this means that they won the Nobel Prize for this, because again, when Einstein labeled what he called spooky action at a distance, he definitely was kind of kidding around, but he was trying to explain a phenomenon that mainly originally existed in living systems, right? So before I kind of go into this, there's a lot of noise coming in from a microphone somewhere, so we can turn the mics off if somebody's in. So basically, the fact that these three physicists won the Nobel Prize in physics for this is telling you that once again, that which is strange, considered fringe, not easily accepted by mainstream physicists at all, and definitely not taken very seriously. But this phenomenon of entanglement, which existed in living systems, like there were experiments done where a mother and a baby rabbit have their brains wired to an electroencephalogram, and then using an atomic clock to measure precise time, separated by distances of over 6,000 miles. If you pinprick the baby, the mother's brain responds faster than the speed of light. It's actually instantaneous. So it was done with conscious and living systems, and then also eventually evolved into really doing experiments on entangling pairs of electrons and photons and then separating them and seeing that if you altered the function of one, the other would respond instantaneously, circumventing the speed of light limit. So this is the Nobel Prize. I mean, so you can see that this opens up the ineffable effects of quantum mechanics are starting to find applications. There is now a large field of research that includes quantum computers, quantum networks, and secure quantum encrypted communication. So this is going to turn into technology, people. So this is interesting because John Clauser developed John Bell's ideas leading to the practical experiment. And this was going all the way back to the experiments done at Bell Labs in the early days. And hence, if you see the movie TV series Fringe, you'll see that the connection to Bell Labs and I'm trying to remember his name, Leonard Nimoy's character, William Bell. So this is really incredible because again, I know classical physicists. I've worked with them. I worked in nuclear fusion with Bogdan Maglich. I knew Claude Swanson, who also worked for Maglich, and Claude Swanson recently passed away. And he wrote two massive books trying to explain paranormal phenomenon, using classical understandings of physics. And this is one of the big ones, the quantum communication. So this is it. It's happened, right? And it's time to wake up and realize that it's happened, and that what was formerly considered fringe, crazy talk. See, what I found is wherever the money flows, you get people talking. If you pay a lawyer, they'll talk. If you don't, they won't. If you pay politicians, they'll talk. And if you don't, they won't. And it's the same with scientists. A lot of them believe things that they don't want you to know that they believe, because they're mainly afraid of losing their research funding. And in fact, that was very clear in the case of Avi Loeb, the Harvard astronomer who believed that Oumuamua was actually an intelligently driven extraterrestrial visitor. Right. So now you come to one of my favorite subjects, which is Richard Feynman. Let me just show you who he is for a second for some of those who don't know Richard Feynman. I have a YouTube video here queued up just so you can see him for a moment. You can see his character. And when you see Feynman, this is Feynman. Let me know if you can hear this, Rose. Can you hear him when I press play? Anyway, so that's Richard Feynman, just so you can see him.
Oh, sorry, David, I was muted.
I'm not gonna play his video. I just want you to actually see Richard Feynman.
You can't hear it. You can't hear it.
Then the share audio function is not working there, but you could just see who he is for a moment. Now, Feynman wrote a book called The Strange Theory of Light and Matter, and in it there are experiments where he stacks sheets of glass, right? So if you stack sheets of glass and on one on top of another on top of another. So let's say this crystal is like a sheet of glass, and then they would send photons, particles of light, into the multi-stack sheets of glass, and again using counters and atomic clocks. If you stack, here's the best way to explain. because your body is emitting infrared light off of all of your organs, and that light travels at the speed of light, just like ordinary sunlight does. So your light coming from your chest in infrared will reach the sun in 8 minutes and 21 seconds. Now, when you look at the sun, you're seeing it 8 minutes and 21 seconds ago. So everything we see distance from our eyes is actually in time. It's lost in time. Nobody sees the real universe in real time. So the first thing to understand in understanding this breakthrough in actually being able to develop quantum systems that can circumvent the speed of light. If you were to close your eyes and only rely on the quantum part of you to see, you would see the real universe. The real universe that's happening right now. You actually don't see the real universe, but a part of you does. And you have two areas of strangeness, hence again, Doctor Strange. One is the behavior of the strange quarks, and quarks are very heavy particles of high energy and mass, because mass and energy are equivalent in Einstein's formula. Energy is equal to mass times the speed of light squared. So the more massive, the more energy, that you get in that equation. And what happens is these strange quarks are leaving and going and coming back to their constituent atoms and their places within those atoms in a way that is so random and chaotic that it cannot be quantified. There's no way to quantify it in any formula. And that drives physicists crazy, and they therefore call it strange behavior. But it's happening. Now, when something's not strange, you can determine its behavior. But another strange phenomena is the angular momentum of the electron around the nucleus of the atom, the proton and the neutron, which are made up of quarks and all kinds of subatomic particles. And the angular momentum of the electron can also not be quantified, in that it's strange. But ordinary light is strange. This is what Richard Feynman discovered by stacking these sheets of glass on top of each other and shining lasers through them. Photons, particles of light, do three things. So this is important in magnetic field therapy, and understanding this is that because let's say you're a target and I hit you with a laser, right? And the light will hit a target.
Oh, that hurt.
Even this piece of steel with all my magnets stuck to it, right? So
yeah.
Photons will bounce off the steel, and I'll be able to see a picture of it. Some will go right through the steel, and some will transfer their charge to all the subatomic particles inside the steel and speed up the orbit of the electron and cause electrons to start jumping shells. And when they jump shells, they transmit and receive energy depending on which shell they've jumped to, and you have this whole exchange of energy. See, the theory in quantum physics that it's called Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, is, let's say, here's your proton, and this little tiny guy is your electron, and the wavelength is the space between them, and the orbit of the electron is going around its angular momentum around the proton and the neutron. And to be certain where it is, if the wavelength of light is longer than the diameter of the orbit of the electron, you don't know where the heck the thing is. But in order to be more precise and know where it is, I have to use a shorter wavelength of light. Hence, blue light is a shorter wavelength than red light, but blue light has more energy in it. So if I hit the electron orbit with a blue photon, I've already changed its orbit. So I've affected it. And when scientists were doing this experiment in the early days, they found something more astonishing, is the minds of the researchers were also affecting the position. So it became known as Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, and it also became known as fringe science. And for decades, scientists tried to explain.
That's non-local, right?
Well, no, it's we're talking about the position of the electron in the orbit. It is
I know, but the
non-determinable.
concept is called non-local in science, right?
Not this. No. We're not talking about non-local. We're talking about observer and observed. So you use light, photons, to observe, but you can't, when the wavelength of light is this big, and what you're looking at is this big.
Yeah.
The signal coming back is this big, so you don't know where what is this big is inside of the circle of the wavelength of the light. So the more precise the wavelength of light gets, it transfers energy, and therefore it's disturbing the situation. So you don't actually know where the electron really is because you keep changing it. But then they found
when it's observed, it's a particle, and when it's observed, it's a particle, and when it's not, it's a wave, right?
Yeah, but the wavelength is, if it's too big, you don't know where the electron is, and the electron is not this. It is one of the smaller particles there are, but it's not the smallest, right? Because you're going to get into taus and muons and pions and kaons, all kinds of subatomic particles. So therefore, it's impossible to observe without affecting the observed. But to the astonishment of the researchers, the consciousness was affecting the observed. Now, this is where it gets more amazing. And Richard Feynman's strange theory of light and matter is that ordinary light does this. Ordinary light. So if he's observing 3 sheets of glass and wants to know which photon will bounce off the surface of sheet number 1, which one will go through sheet number 1 and bounce off the surface of sheet number 2, and then which one will penetrate sheet number 2, bounce off the surface of sheet number 3, and which one will pass through all 3. Okay, so he's tracking all of them, and he wants to see if ordinary light behaves in a quantifiable fashion, and drives him crazy. I mean, this book is only this big. Strange Theory of Light and Matter. And it drives them crazy because you would think, in order to make observations, ordinary observations using sheets of glass, we're not in the quantum universe here, right? We're not looking at wavelengths of electrons. We're looking at ordinary photons and trying to determine which one of them is going to bounce off a sheet of glass. And he can't do it. And when you see this randomness, which again you'll see in the strange quark, the angular momentum of the electron, and ordinary particles of light, you realize what's going on is the observer is random, right? The minds of the researchers are in this random, non-coherent state. So therefore, all the particles of light are behaving according to the observer's instructions. And because you have a magnetic field, and magnetic fields can actually bend and tell light what to do, what you don't realize is you're telling light what to do, but you don't know what to tell it because you're in this random chaotic state. And this is where Richard Feynman and all of them missed the mark. Is a scientist wants everything to work on a calculator and a slide ruler, and that the universe works like a clock, and it doesn't. And so if a non-random observer who's in a high focus state of coherence, the photons will become coherent. But when they're not coherent, they become chaotic. So that means it's exactly what Jesus said. If you have 100% faith that the mountain will move, it will move. And there are examples in the Bible of angels moving whole mountains, right? So how do they do it? And you think, well, the mind of a single person can't really be that powerful. Well, what frequency training teaches you to do is it teaches you to follow and focus on a particular pitch and sound and frequency. And if you apply yourself, you increase your coherency. In fact, it's not really the frequency that's doing anything. It's whether you're responding to the frequency that does something. You become coherent. And all the photons and all the particles of light that are bouncing off of you, again, are traveling at the speed of light. And the photons that are leaving you right now from your surface and from the core, because the infrared light is coming from the core of you. And according to Fritz Albert Popp, a German biophysicist, the photons coming off you also span the entire rainbow spectrum. And according to Fritz Albert Popp, some of your photons are traveling instantaneous faster than light, which is the quantum communication function that these three physicists just won the Nobel Prize for. So you're actually more powerful than all of everything in creation if you're coherent. But if you're scattered, right, and this is the proverbial question, if you take in the knowledge of good and evil and you take judgment upon yourself and you're judging everything, you're in chaos. If you're judging yourself, should I do this or should I do that? Should I vote Democrat or Republican? See, that's good and evil. Good and evil is a trick. It's a game. If you believe it, it becomes real because you judge, this is good, this is bad. And then your neighbor says, no, this is good, this is bad. I disagree with you. And they hit you over the head with a hammer. Well, but then if you agree with your neighbor, you become buddies and you hang out together until the day comes and you have a disagreement. And then, you're fighting each other and, you get a divorce. So you can see that all people's brains work in this fashion of judgment, and they're bouncing all over the place like this, going over the place. If I make this decision, will that happen? Should I marry this person or should I marry that person? Your whole life can change based on how you judge things, right, for yourself. But what you don't realize is you're telling all the photons and all the light that's coming out of you and all the light that's reflecting off of you. See, Richard Feynman found the photons that reflect off, the ones that penetrate through, and the one that penetrates through one sheet of glass, two sheet of glass, three sheet of glass, 4, 5, 6, 7. You can't quantify it because it's behaving like a human mind. and that's because the researcher, the observer, is actually in that state. So the photons do whatever you tell them to do. This is really hard to get because if you're telling all the light what to do by the state of your being, then everything you're experiencing has to do with what you're telling the light to do. So when I'm using my technology and I'm stimulating the left right hemisphere of my brain into a focus, and I'm telling with using frequencies of longitude and latitude, hence remote viewing, that all my photons are going to go to a certain place on the earth. What do we see everything with? Photons, particles of light. And if you tell your part of your photonic field to go somewhere, you will start to see it and experience it, right? And photons don't just have pictures, they carry sound, right? What do you think radio is? Radio is exactly that. We're sending voices and music on a light wave, right? And we're actually sending everything out. So there you go. And we're doing the same thing with pictures, but there's more there than even that. There's more there than even that. There's feeling. When I told my photons to go to the location of Jesus's baptism and to move through the timeline and experience what happened when John the Baptist was baptizing. I had an experience, one of the best experiences of my entire life. So how can I do that? I mean, see, I'm a better sensor than this, which we talked about last week, by billions of times. This can tell me, a little bit of information about how big a magnetic field it is and how strong it is at different distances. But my system can tell me way more than that. So if I can go, and again, if you see Third Eye Spies, the movie Third Eye Spies, with Russell Targ and all these, famous remote viewing researchers, they found in the end that every single human being can do this. They can remote view, but it's not just the view that photons give us. They give us sound. They actually record feeling and vibration, and therefore the actual experience of Jesus' baptism is actually recorded in the photonic field, which means you can access it. You can experience it, as I did, and it will blow your mind if you can do this. But you're in control. So if you say, "Oh, I don't believe that," I'm going to keep all my photons right here because I don't believe what they're saying. But yet researchers and scientists have found this out to be true. And in fact, that the Nobel Prize in Physics is going to these three physicists who have actually proven it mechanistically so that it will become technology. We will probably forget searching the heavens with giant radio telescopes for ET signals, and we'll probably start getting signals using this quantum communication function because it's faster than light. And why would somebody send an ET signal, 3,000 light years from here, and you can't see it until 3,000 years later? But a quantum function, you can see it right away. So we're starting to evolve. These physicists, it took them decades. We've known about action at a distance way back since Einstein, but nobody took it seriously. And physicists, who, if they were to teach it, in college and universities, they could get fired over it. But now it's happened, right? And what Richard Feynman discovered, see, when you can't write a mathematical formula that says, like Planck's formula, E is equal to hf, energy is equal to a function of the Planck's constant in frequency, and that energy is equal to mass times the speed of light squared is Einstein's. Those are formulas that explain a function repeatedly and reliably, apparently what appears to be repeatedly. But when you get deeper, you find out there's this consciousness element. So the thing that's missing that makes, and this is William Tiller at Stanford's work. I put William Tiller in my film Quantum Communication. He's one of my favorite people in the whole film. And when consciousness becomes coherent, which means focused, not chaotic, in the simplest term, it actually means much more than that, then all of a sudden consciousness is powerful enough to move a spacecraft at multiples of the speed of light. Consciousness, according to William Tiller's actual experiments, is more powerful than gamma rays. And right now, in a functioning mechanistic world that doesn't include consciousness, gamma rays are the most powerful energy we know because they have the shortest wavelength. So your gamma rays are here, then your X-rays are here, and then you're going to come all the way up into ultraviolet far, and then you're going to get to ultraviolet near, then you're going to get to the color violet, and then you're going to see the rainbow spectrum, and then you're going to go all the way, from violet to blue, all the way down to red, and then below red is infrared, and then infrared is the light coming off of all living things. Basically have a certain amount of infrared light. And then you're going to get down into your radio spectrum, right? So it's all light, which means, according to what Feynman discovered, is all light behaves strangely, which means it has a behavior called strange, meaning they don't know why it's not behaving in a way that you can get it to behave like a clock. You can say, this is what it's going to do today. This particular photon is going to go through sheet of glass number 2, and this one's going to do this. No, it can't. And that means, because you not only have all these photons bouncing off of you, giving your image out to the entire universe, but all the vibrations you're feeling on the inside, all these little emotional nuances, those are vibrations. And they're going out into the universe too. So your inner, and then when you close your eyes at night and your pineal gland lights up and you're dreaming, those are photons too. And they're going out as well. But there's the quantum function is instantaneous. So if you could take off your blinders, the blinders would be the part of you that sees light is actually blind. And the part of you that senses the quantum is the real. So if anything is an illusion, it's light on the surface. But the quantum light is that which is real. And if your light waves are all chaotic, because now you're going to get into manifestation, right? What do you want to manifest? And if you don't believe, then all the photons you're sending out will communicate with all the other photons. This person doesn't believe. They don't believe. And how do you train a person's mind that is chaotic to become coherent? So you can't just say, I believe in Jesus Christ and I'm saved, right? Because maybe on the substratum, you don't. And if you believe it through and through and through, then belief becomes real. It's not even belief anymore. You're actually having a real experience. Like, I can honestly say, when I got baptized as a baby, which I remember, I was only a few weeks old, remember it really well. And I looked at the priest and his sweaty lip and his eyes, and I knew he doesn't believe and he doesn't know anything, and he's only doing this as some kind of facade, but he doesn't believe it through and through. I knew that at 2 weeks old. But the moment I experienced, by sending my energy body, which is my photons, to the location where Jesus was baptized, what I experienced then, which is very recent, is far more mind-blowing than my actual baptism as a kid, because I didn't experience this super unbelievable state of awareness and consciousness that happened. And I realized that when John the Baptist was baptizing, why the people traveled for miles through the wilderness to go see him is because by word of mouth, people were having this experience, this incredible experience. And they said, you have to come get baptized. And then when Jesus came upon the scene, and John said, I'm not worthy to be even in the presence of this one, and he baptizes him, which means he anoints him, and that this one will baptize you with fire, and using the same harmonic techniques, using frequencies. I did the frequencies, and I had the dream of the fire circle. I shared this earlier in these recordings, and I saw Jesus baptizing with actual fire. And that's what John the Baptist said. It wasn't metaphoric. It was real. And Jesus never baptized with water. We know that's not in the scriptures anywhere. You never see Jesus sticking somebody under the water and pulling them up like you see in the movies. No, he doesn't do that. John said he would baptize by fire. And it is superior. What Jesus was going to do was superior than what John was doing with the water. But John did not become a follower of Jesus. He continued baptizing people until, Salome ordered his head to be taken. And then the cult of John the Baptist and the head of John the Baptist became a super mystery cult among the Knights Templars. But to actually see, what is the Akashic record, right? The real Akashic would be real, because every single thing that's happening on this planet and that's ever happened on this planet is in time right now. It exists in the holographic universe. Everything you do, everything is traveling out in the universe at the speed of light, and light goes through stuff, right? So your light and your image of you goes right through the wall of the house. Like, you can be seen right through the wall of the house, because we know this. Richard Feynman says photons will go through, some will bounce off, and some will transfer their energy to whatever the membrane is made of. Like, I can measure electromagnetic frequencies like going right through solid steel, no problem. It goes right through it like butter. But again, some of it's bouncing off, some of it's going through, some of it's transferring its energy. It's the same as the sheets of glass. So every single thing you're doing is getting recorded. The universe knows everything we do. How does Santa Claus know if we've been good or bad? Because everything you're doing is going out there. So in a way, there's no way to hide from the universe, God, the creator, because it just knows everything. And when Adam and Eve take in this proverbial knowledge they were warned not to take in, called good and evil, they were ashamed. They covered themselves up and sewed fig leaves together. And that's how God knew. They took in the knowledge of the fatal knowledge that causes human beings to judge each other, and they judge themselves. They become neurotic. Whereas they shouldn't be ashamed of anything. They shouldn't be ashamed of their nudity, their sexuality. They shouldn't be ashamed of their love. They shouldn't be ashamed of anything, because they are. All of this is their natural being. But by judgment, see, judgment is the beginning of the neurosis, which is in a way the craziness of the electron and the craziness of the photons that these physicists are observing, going, why is it all so crazy? And why can't you just get this to stop and be focused and organized? Why can't these photons just go through sheet number 1 when I want them to, and go through sheet number 2 when I want them to, and sheet number 3, and so on? And they won't behave. Well, humans don't behave. They're the same. So if all the light is the behavior of consciousness and it's telling everything what to do, then wouldn't you want to teach it how to become coherent and focused so it does what you want it to do? Well, that's manifestation. That's what it is. But how do you go from a state of chaos, which, see, chaos is the unbeliever, because it doesn't believe anything, because all it's experiencing is total chaos. And when your nervous system is in chaos, then your life's going to be in chaos. And then when you start to bring things into focus, because we all have to focus, like even doing a job causes us to focus. It starts to bring coherence. Swinging a hammer and hitting a nail instead of your thumb is focus. It's training you to focus. So even doing a work or a labor is part of bringing the mind into focus. And that's why it's good for us to actually do certain things. And it may not be good for us to manifest, okay, I want to have $1 million so I can lie around, go on vacation, and go to sleep. That may not be good for us. It may do the opposite. It may make us lazy, and it may make us not want to do anything. But working with frequencies, what I've discovered over the years that I've been doing this, has brought my consciousness to a place that is so mind-blowing. I wish more than anything that I could share this and have somebody else experience this, so that they could actually see that this is the transformation. When Jesus said, if thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be filled with light, he didn't say, you get baptized, it's all done. What he said is, if thine eye be single. If means if. It doesn't mean your eye is single when you're baptized. It means if thine eye, and then your whole body shall be filled with light. And this is one thing William Tiller brought up in his research, is that when a light bulb is coherent, its light gets brighter. And when it's chaotic, its light is dimmer. It's really amazing when you understand what coherency is. When light comes to a focus, that's what a laser is, right? A laser, this laser is going through a ruby, right? We have these on my website. So when light passes, focused light passes through a gem like a ruby, then the energy, because the energy is in the light, but the information in the ruby comes out, and the energy of the ruby comes out, and then I can hit my hand with it. I can do all my acupuncture points and get real ruby focused light. So a laser is brighter because it's coherent. So we're the same way. When we're scattered, our light is dim. So Jesus said, if thine eye be single, which means no longer in duality, coherent, focused, we light up. And then he did this. He transfigured on the mountain in front of the disciples. And so the frequency part is a training part. It's similar to the way, when you learn how to sing, and you're a kid and you're in the choir in the church and you're learning, your 8 octaves, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And you keep training at these pitches. You're actually using a technique of vibration to become focused. And that's why really good singers become very, very radiant, because they're doing the exercises. And I teach this in my inner circle every week. I mean, every Wednesday, tomorrow morning, a group of us gather right now where we're doing the tones of the Ark of the Covenant. We've been going up every 2 weeks. We go up another octave. So every day we practice, 15 minutes of breathing, 15 minutes of toning Ark of Covenant tones, and 15 minutes of silence. And when you do these exercises repeatedly, you start to come into coherence and you start to experience a far greater light than that which is dissipated and scattered. And I'm not saying everybody's scattered. Obviously, we have natural things in our culture that bring us to focus. And there's many things. When you're making a meal, you're all of your consciousness is coming to a focus. Otherwise, you'd start a fire and burn your foot and get hot oil in your face, right? So everything in life is kind of begging us to come into a focus. But when Jesus says, if thine eye be single, seek you first the kingdom of heaven, and all else shall be added unto you. Wait a minute. Isn't that antithetical to saying all I have to do is be baptized and believe? He's saying seeking is an act of work. It's a life work, actually. If thine eye be single is a life work. You can't do this in 2 days. It does, and yet, in a way, what I experienced when I sent my photons to the location of Jesus' baptism and produced one of my favorite experiences I've ever had in my life, in a way, your initiation is like a preview of what it's going to feel like when you come into heaven. Like a lot of people have described this in near-death experiences. I spent years as a member of the Los Angeles chapter of the near-death International Association of Near-Death Studies, and a woman named Darlene Jamin, who has since passed away, headed those meetings. And you hear story after story of people coming into the group sharing their near-death experiences, as I did also. And you start to see there is an organized, consistent phenomenon that happens at the time of death, is that we approach, either through a tunnel or coming straight in, we approach this much brighter, much more focused light that carries within it a vibration that is so perfect and so much higher than what we feel here. But yet many people go into it, and then the light says, well, you're not ready actually to be in this state and be in this place right now. You have to go back and finish your life. And why do you have to finish your life? Why can't we all just go straight into it? Because there's a lesson here about becoming more coherent, becoming more focused. And I found in my years of practicing different meditations that The frequency training was a huge missing element. Hence the Lord's Prayer in Aramaic, O thou from whom the breath of life comes. So that's the breath part. O thou from whom the breath of life comes, who fills all realms with sound, light, and vibration. Sound, light, and vibration is the frequency part. O thou from whom the breath of life comes, who fills all realms with sound, light, and vibration, may you touch me in my utmost holies, let your will come true in all that is material and dense. So all the material is dense is bringing the light to earth in the material and dense world. So we're here to bring the light here into the material and dense world, which is the same as thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. But that's not what Jesus spoke. That's not the Aramaic of the Lord's Prayer. Why don't we focus more on the way he really said it rather than the way the church invented it over 1,000 years later is what it became. So the frequency part is there in the Lord's Prayer in the Aramaic language that Jesus spoke. It's the same. But the beauty of seeing, when you really see how things work, and I was speaking about this last week, when you understand how things work, you understand what works. And then you see it actually working within yourself and in your own life. You go, this is how it works, right? I have to pick up this tool and move forward and do this because this, actually, I planted trees for 23 years. That's a long time. And what am I doing? I'm carrying seedling trees around my waist that weigh about 75 pounds, climbing around the pouring rain, digging a hole on a steep mountainside, putting the tree in, and closing the hole perfectly and moving on. I've got to get 1,500 trees in the ground per day to make my, tiny wage that they paid me in those days. But I loved it. Focus, repetition, putting the tree in the ground, bowing down, touching the earth, repetition. So when a carpenter is hammering a nail, and of course you don't use hammers anymore, you use nail guns, but you're getting focused. The mind's getting trained. By the time you're mature, you come and meet a bunch of people who have been building a house. They radiate incredible coherency. It's really amazing. When you meet a plumber who's been doing the same thing over and over and over again, redirecting water, it's a focus. It brings you there. The worst thing that happens is when we say, I don't want to do anything. I just want to get rich and lie back. Actually, the mind just turns to mush. Some people who work in the financial world are in high focus states. I mean, my brother Doug worked in the financial world his whole life. He knows everything about money. And that's a focus. So that's only a small part of getting all your photons, because that's what you are. Okay, so you're mainly made of water, and water is mainly hydrogen, right? 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. And hydrogen radiates a frequency. The hydrogen window in the universe, I think, is 1.420 gigahertz. So everything has a frequency. We are beings of frequency. But the mind that's not focused and coherent, actually, what causes the disruption of peace and the healing state. So people want to know this all the time. Do your frequency.
So David, do you want to take some
Well, just
questions?
hang on. Let me just finish this point, because I'll have 10 minutes for question.
Sure.
Is do your frequency devices heal this and heal that? See, it's not the frequency that heals. It's the frequency that trains your nervous system to come into focus and coherency that causes the healing to take place, right? When Jesus told the apostles in Mark 6:1-8 that they had to have their staff, the staff is an antenna whose wavelength is 4 times its height. It has to be measured perfectly. According to the book of Moses, it has to have a copper coil on it. And that will train your nervous system to become coherent and in a high focus, high frequency state. And that's what causes the healing. It's not the frequency itself, it's your response to it coming into coherency that causes the healing. And then the apostles went out because he made them have their staffs before they did all their healings, which is right there in the Gospels, and nobody even pays attention that they use this instrument called a staff to keep their nervous systems calibrated. So how do you manifest and raise your body frequency?
Wait. There's a question before that. David. In our body, if our body emits infrared light as you speak, then what happens to a body that is undergoing infrared therapy or infrared light therapy? That was the first question.
Well, let's see. Your infrared therapy, Stacy, some of them are very good. I would rather have this little ruby, because this is your red spectrum, right? Infrared is below the color red. So I would rather have ruby heat than just some plastic LED lights emitting red light. So again, that's not infrared light. But if I take the red LEDs are not infrared because infrared is below the color red. But if I take some really good stones and heat them up, and I do this all the time, like if I get a cold or my kids get sick, I've measured with an ion meter, and I've seen more energy coming off of stones on a meter than I can see coming off of an infrared, what they call an infrared light system. There's more infrared coming off a hot rock. But if I tune that rock to a frequency in combination with the heat and put it on the body, that's real infrared. And there's lots of charged particles coming off of that hot rock that I can actually measure. And if I measure like a real fire, like coming from my fireplace, one of the most healing ways to heat up the body, get the bones really hot, is sitting next to a real fire from a real burning piece of wood with some nice rocks around it. And that's better infrared therapy than using lights, because lights again are above infrared. But if I were to heat up this ruby, which is on the end of this gem laser, because this is coherent focus light and it's ruby light, and when the light passes through the ruby, again, there are actually four things that happen. The same four things I mentioned. Not only am I sending energy into the ruby is actually emitting, and it will produce a faster than light signal, which is real tachyon energies, right? So if I put this on different points of my body, because light is heat and energy is heat, even though I can't feel this as heat, there is some infrared there, but it's focused. So I can take this ruby laser and hit my glands, my thymus glands. And, we have sapphires, emerald, all kinds of different gems in these things. But I look at the quality of the light, like what it's made out of. Plastic LED panels don't interest me that much. Like I said, just heat up a nice rock, a riverbed rock. People do this in massage, like they'll put the hot rocks along the spine. There's real energy there. You can measure it on a meter. I have all kinds of meters. I can measure the hot rocks on a really good meter. Right. So that's that question. How do you manifest?
So
and
now
raise
you
your
can
body
do this. So how do you manifest?
Well, raising your body frequency, the way there's several stages in doing it. You can't just go to the highest frequency right away. It's like a surfer. So you're trying to catch a wave. And if you want to catch the highest frequency wave, which is the smallest part of the curl, you got to start at the bottom of the wave. You can't just go straight to the top, because you'll miss it. So when in my inner circle, what people are doing is we start with the lowest octave. We do that for 2 weeks. Then the next 2 weeks, we do the next octave. So we're doing step frequency training, and we'll spend a few months on one particular set, and then we'll move on to another set, right? And another set. And then we apply breath, and then we match the pitch we hear in the headphones with we make a vowel tone with our voice that matches the intensity and the frequency of what we're hearing. And that way we're applying our vocal cords and our own personal vibration, because every single human has a personal voice signature that is not that is unlike any other person on earth. So you got 8 billion people, and every single person has a different sound in their voice. Even though I can sound a little bit like my brothers, my brothers all have, there's 5 of us, all have a different sound to us, even though because of our family that there's qualities that are similar. So when you apply that, your vocal cords to the pitch training, once you do these exercises repeatedly over and over and over again, I have a whole course on my website, Quantum Regenesis level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 now. And once you do this, you start to experience it. So how do you raise your frequency? You can't just go all the way and start vibrating yourself at the highest frequency. You just can't do that. You've got to start, and you sweep bottom to top, bottom to top, bottom to top. And you're going to do this for years. And what you experience when you're doing it, you start to experience the radiance in your spirit. And what's happening to your body is, it responds. But again, we're not meant to be in these things forever. We're here for a while. We're only physically perfect for pretty small window of the whole time, actually. When I was a tree planter for 23 years, I was in the highest physical condition of my life, and I was an extreme skier and a skydiver, and all of the adrenaline highs I got, even from tree planting, I would get an adrenaline based high, and I would get a nature high. None of those experiences compare as a grain of sand to what I experience now at 61 years old. Now, what I experience when I meditate every day is mind-blowing compared to the quality of what extreme sports did for me. But I was meditating the whole time. I've been meditating since I was, 12 years old. But what I get out of these different things that I've done in my life, what I experience now working with breath, frequency, and the light surpasses everything. Every single human experience, it surpasses it by millions of times. There's no way to describe what it's like. And yet, my physical organism is older. I don't experience pain. One thing I noticed in my 30s, I had a lot of pain. I was amazed how much pain my body had. I don't experience pain anymore. It is the weirdest thing. Yeah, I get tired. Like, I'm raising 2 kids alone and dealing with my crazy husky, but I chop firewood. I cut my firewood with my own chainsaw, and I don't notice any pain. I can't feel pain, and if there's pain in my body, it doesn't even bother me. It's like no problem. It's signal. Like when I was a kid, when you're a baby, you hurt yourself and you scream your head off. Oh my God, I freaking hurt myself. Now the actual signal in my nervous system that registers pain is so tiny in comparison to the bliss state that I go into every day, that is supreme light and ecstasy and bliss, that the pain is like, it's way down there. It doesn't even, I don't even really care about it. So can we measure electricity in our body? Anything? Yeah, sure. You can measure electricity in the body with a voltmeter. Anything but love feeling in our body is a good thing in NDE. Anything put love feeling in our body. Yeah. The being that David encountered is Andromedan, right? In his work. No, I met Christ in person. Like, I can tell you, I've met a lot of different beings in my spiritual path, both in the physical world, physical teachers from different religions. And why I could say that I chose Jesus is because I actually met him 7 times, And there's nobody that compares to him. I've met the Dalai Lama and meditated with the Dalai Lama, and I don't judge any religions. Trust me. I this is God's business. I'm not interested in judgment. I'm not interested in being a Christian who is going to judge any religion, because Jesus told us not to judge. I don't know. All I can tell you is I met Christ, and there's nobody like him. There's nobody that I've met that compares to him in any way. So it's a very simple choice for me to choose Jesus, Isa Messiah, Yeshua Messiah, because I met him. Now, when I was baptized as a kid at 2 weeks old, I didn't have any say in it. My parents did it because my grandparents wanted it. It was tradition. But it's a different thing when you actually experience it. There is no one in the spiritual world that I've met that compares to Jesus. So my choice is out of pure love. It's not out of judgment. I don't judge the other religions of the world. Who knows what God has seen there, or what they're attaining? It's not my business, because that's when you put judgment in your own hand, and Jesus said not to judge, that's where we get into the trap, right? It's not my job to do that. So I have met luminous beings that I've seen with my own eyes from other star systems, but none of them compare to Christ. Like, not even close. It's not even like a 50-50. This being it has the quality of what you feel in the presence. I mean, and then people also ask, well, how do you know Satan can appear as an angel of light? It doesn't say in the Bible that Satan can appear as Jesus Christ. And he showed me the sign of the cross. I fell down inside of the cross. He baptized me himself. The Bible doesn't say that Satan can do that. Satan can't appear in the sign of the cross. Satan can't appear as Jesus. It says that Satan can appear as an angel of light. And I had to meet Satan myself as well. And it's so easy when you're in the presence of Satan and you're in the presence of the real Christ. If you can't tell the difference, you're incredibly stupid. He can't trick you. Satan doesn't radiate with tremendous unifying love and bliss and love for all humankind and the creation. No, his light is very gray, actually, and as soon as you stand in front of Satan, he tries to engage your ego into doing battle with him. And because he's the first angel that took in duality, good and evil is battle, right? That's what it is. So you can't have one without the other. But human good, so let's just measure human goodness compared to the light of Christ, the light of God. The human goodness doesn't even equal 1/4 of the goodness of God. So human good that's what Jesus said in Philip. In this world, there's good and evil. Its good things are not good, and its evil things not evil. He's telling you that human good is still a worthless attainment by comparison to God's light, because God's light it's not a judgment. It is pure love, and love is a state of unity where there's no duality. Where it's once you experience it. And people are saying, well, how do you know you didn't get tricked by, the bad guy? Well, it's so easy. My God, when you're in actually, you can't look in his eyes. If you look in Satan's eyes, he will do battle with you. And actually, if you want to play the game of warrior, he will beat you, because he's the master of conflict, because he's the first person to take in conflict. Good and evil is conflict. It's judgment. God said, don't ever take in the knowledge that causes you to judge good and evil. And then everyone thinks, then Satan, the serpent, says in the Garden of Eden, it's a good thing that you now know the difference between good and evil. What do you mean? God told you not to take in the knowledge of good and evil, yet now inadvertently you think it's a good thing that you know the difference. There is no difference. It's judgment. It's a trick. It's trying to get you to do battle instead of to do love, right? Because to do love means that you're no longer judging. You're coming from love. that you're
You're
converting to
unconditional.
you're converting to Christianity and Jesus through love, not through fear and intimidation, but because you love him, because you see he radiates this the undivided. Jesus said, if Satan's kingdom be divided, how shall it stand? Because it's a divider, because it's judgment. So that's why he told us not to judge. And so when you come into coherency and you come into high frequency, you naturally rise above judgment. You naturally rise above it because you see it's a trap, it's a trick that human good, it's good. Like you could say human good is healthy food, a healthy marriage, healthy children, a healthy lifestyle. And that's human good, right? But just look, what happens to all the marriages? What happens? Just look at them. How many people can stay together and continue to love each other? How many people don't cheat on their spouse? I've never once cheated on us ever, not even on my girlfriends that I had before I married my wife and had kids. But it doesn't matter. How many people don't ever cheat and are perfect? It's tiny, right? Why can't we do it? Why can't we fall in love and be in love and love each other? You know, when you take your marriage vows, why can't we keep those vows? Because the good, what we call human good, and this is really hard to accept when Jesus says this in Philip, in this world there's good and evil. It's good things are not good and it's evil things not evil. He's trying to dispel the illusion of good and evil because God's good dwarfs human good. Human good is an egotistical vision. It doesn't give you eternal satisfaction. That's why the marriages fail, because it doesn't give you eternal satisfaction. So people break up. I know this because it's kind of, something my daughter's dealing with in her school. She has a lot of friends, and one week they stay with this parent, then the other week they stay with that parent because that parent and this parent broke up and they're all in different relationships and they all have different kids. It's really hard on the kids to go through this, but it's so common now that people get married and have kids and break up, and then they go in another relationship and then they break out of that one. And that's what my mom did. She was married 3 times, right? And that's because the human good, what we call goodness, it's still ego. It's still part of the ego. And what is good to one person may not be good to another, right? Like, so you can have things in common and say, because we have these things in common, we can get married and have a relationship and be in goodness together. But then one of the people in the relationship decides, well, I'm not into that anymore. I'm actually into this. And the other one goes, I can't believe you're into that. And then you have a big fight, and then the kids are in the middle of it. So why is it that upon the baptism that we're not made perfect? Why isn't the work done yet? Because if it was, Christians would not commit suicide. Yes, they do. If it was, Christians would not, rob people of all their money and lay guilt trips on them and then run off with the money. I've seen it a million times in my life, going to churches and finding out the minister robbed millions of dollars from the congregation and went to the Bahamas with his wife. I mean, this actually happened in a church I used to go to in Los Angeles. So why aren't they full in the Spirit upon the baptism? Because the work isn't done yet. That's the initiation. So the work is in the Lord's Prayer in Aramaic, O thou from whom the breath of life comes. So we practice the breath, who fills all realms with sound, light, and vibration. That's the frequency work. That, and that work is a life work. It's a life work to reach the state of heaven's light. If thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be filled with light. It takes a lifetime to do this. It's human good. Like, look, the rich Hollywood celebrities are a perfect example of this. They have all the money in the world, and they can't stay married even for a few months. They get married and then they're freaking fighting and breaking up because they have so much money. They can say, well, we're having a fight now. We don't get along. I'm going to break up with you. We spent $3 million on the wedding. It's hilarious. Nobody, there is no, with all the money in the world, you still don't have what I'm talking about. When thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be filled with light. When you experience this every day, as I do, there's nothing earthly that compares to it. Nothing earthly can touch this. There's nothing that can fill you the way God fills you when you become single, coherent, and in your spirit. And then you see, oh my God, all these things, that people do to get high. They do alcohol, they do drugs, they take antidepressants because they're depressed. None of these things, the same phenomenon of taking the antidepressants exists for the Christian as it does for the non-Christian. The baptism does not. That's why Jesus says in Philip, the chrism is superior to the baptism. Well, what is the chrism? Is it really just being anointed by olive oil, or is it a highly vibrational frequency treated olive oil, which is something I've been working on for a few years now and will be coming out with real crystals in olive oil that are vibrationally activated as an elixir to put on the head and to squirt under the tongue to cause an activation in a person. But see, why is it? It's been the hardest question that I've had to ask the what I've witnessed inside of the Christian movement. Why are the priests molesting our children? Like, why aren't you full? Why are not you filled with the Lord's Spirit? Because what I'm experiencing is absolute fullness beyond measure. There's so much ecstasy and supreme unnameable qualities in the light, but yet why aren't the others in Christianity experiencing this? Well, some are. Actually, I had I don't even know how to describe his title, but he was the head of the Catholic Church in my small town, and I have rarely met such a father as this in my life. And he sat with my family when my wife was still alive and my two kids, and this man was illuminated. There was no doubt about it. And he spoke about it, and I actually got to tell him about my meetings with Jesus, and he just had the most peaceful, radiant glow about him. And when he spoke about what it means to eventually become a saint in the congregation, I could feel that he was really there. It does happen. If a person is really consistent, they can eventually overcome the addictions to the false or the lower ecstasies that the world offers us, right? It offers us all kinds of lower ecstasies. And what I experienced in Christ also, there's no judgment. There's no judgment when you die. What there is, though, is something that is really shocking, is that you judge yourself. Am I ready to vibrate at this frequency of the brightest love and live inside of this love in heaven? Am I ready for it? And does it scare me to open my heart? Because what Jesus showed me is they judge themselves. They come into heaven and they know if they're ready for this. Because remember the book of Revelation, there's a separation. There's the 144,000 who are truly illuminated, who live in heaven with God in Christ. And the most of the Christians inherit the new paradise earth, and they live there for 1,000 years until there's another tribulation. And that's way easier to be inside of, because it will be a perfect life. This is what, and who knows, maybe the paradise earth happens after death. Maybe, it's not something that's going to physically happen on the earth. I don't know. I'm not saying, I don't have the answer to that one. I would like it to happen on the earth. But maybe it happens in the new earth, and the new earth happens when we die. But that group of Christians don't live in the high heavens with the Lord God and Christ, that they live in the perfect earth. And that makes so much sense to me, because as I experience this super high, supreme ecstasy of God state, it's very bright. It's very, it takes a lot. It's actually very hard on the physical organism, the human organism. It's hard on my body when I go into this supreme light every day. Um, I can see physical effects. I don't feel any pain. And again, I felt pain in my 30s. I felt pain in my body and my nervous system in my 40s, but I don't feel pain. It's really weird. I think it's all the frequency work and going into this state. Yeah, if I cut myself, there's pain, but I'm saying the pain doesn't register, because if you're full of bliss, and it's this bliss is this love of God bliss, this ecstasy of God, the God, how God wipes every tear from every eye, is a high frequency state, and most of your consciousness is absorbed in that. If you cut yourself or bang your knee, or I've even hit my leg with an axe and it was bleeding, and I just kept chopping wood. It doesn't really register. Very strange, and that's why. And I spoke about this before in the Acts of John, which were banned by Pope Leo the Great. Jesus appears to John, because John can't stand the massacre of Jesus. He can't look. He cries and runs to the cave on the Mount of Olives, and Jesus appears during his own crucifixion, and he tells John that he's not suffering. He said that body's suffering, but he goes, "I'm not suffering at all." And that now is much more clear to me why that is, because he's God and I only have this tiny percentage of God filling my spirit, and I can measure that against the sensation of physical and emotional pain. And the emotional pain of losing my wife the way she died was enormous, but still, after my wife died in the way she died, every day when I meditate and pray to God, I say, "Glory be to God in the highest, glory be to Jesus Christ, Isa Messiah." And in the light that fills me, it overtakes the emotional suffering of the loss of my wife, which was a year and a quarter ago. So I can measure all human suffering against this light, and I can say that this light is extinguishing the suffering. But in order to get into this state, it is very clear what's missing is in the churches is this practice. All the practices and all the tools were all removed, and that's why the very few feel the Holy Spirit eliminating them. If thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be filled with light. It doesn't say, "Believe in me and you will be filled with this light." It says, "If thine eye be single," and that's a work. That means that you have to come to this place of total non-judgment. Don't get involved in judging other religions or other people. Just be, and when the light fills you, you'll experience it. It is unconditional. It really is. It doesn't care about your faults and the things that you're doing wrong. It slowly makes you a better person naturally, but it's not judging you. So thanks, Joseph, for that comment. Yeah, it's so easy. I think a lot of Christians go into fear about Satan. He's the trickster who got Adam and Eve to take in the knowledge that causes them to judge and
Yeah.
judge themselves and to judge each other. So when we judge each other, we can't love each other, can we? Because we say, "Well, you're a different kind of Christian than me, and my minister says that all the Catholics are going to hell, and because you're Catholic, I'm Baptist, we can't get along." And remember, Jesus said, "If Satan's kingdom be divided, how will it stand?" So Satan is the divider, and it's the judgment and the ego that causes us to divide. We're separate. We're Catholics. We're better than you. All that. You got to let go. Leave the judgment up to God. If God thinks, the Catholics are messed up. Well, leave it to God. Don't take it upon yourself, because that's how we get enemies in the world, and that's how we eventually come to the place of war, is through the judgment. It's actually so peaceful to just let it go, because once you let the judgment go, it's easier to love people. And Jesus taught to convert through love and faith, not through the sword. You don't convert by the sword, and the sword is intimidation, right? If you don't become a Christian, then you will burn in hell. That's not how that's never how he did it. I mean, it's never how it happened. They would see him, they would see the apostles, and they would see the illumination, and they would feel it, and it was natural. I mean, if Jesus could appear right now in our midst, and you saw him as I did, it's instantaneous. You would instantaneously recognize the answer is right in front of you. There's nobody in all of religiondom who radiates what he radiates. There's just nobody. And it's just so plain and simple. There's just nobody. You can read about all these different spiritual teachers and all the sex scandals they get into. Oh my God, there's so many stories. My guru did this, my guru did that. Oh my God, I can't believe he did that. I thought he was a God realized human being. I mean, just again, not judging him, just letting it go, and realizing that, every one of us. I don't even believe that if you don't become a Christian, that it means anything. Because when you die and you're stripped of this body and you see the light that is God, who knows what we're going to see? Maybe all paths lead to Rome. Maybe each religion has a certain purpose. I don't know. Not going to take that upon myself. But I made my choice. And I still feel like I don't belong to a specific form of Christianity, because I've included in my history the Gnostic scriptures that have emerged out of the sand. I believe God brought them out of the sand and brought them into the light of day, and they were translated in major universities. And all they do, actually, I've read all the Gnostic scriptures and I've shared them here. They glorify Christ more. They don't take away any of his glory. They glorify him more. So what's the problem? If he was married, and if the bride of Christ described in Revelation is actually a woman, why does anybody have a problem with that? Because what we do know is an all-male church and an all-male hierarchy led to the abuse of our children. And if we had a balanced male-female driven church, which is, I believe, is clearly there even in the canonized scripture, that then the interpretation is, well, the bride of Christ is actually the all the Christians. And it's, what do you mean? It actually says bride. That's a feminine. It doesn't actually say in the book of Revelation that the bride of Christ is actually the church. It actually says that Jesus is coming with his bride. So what we're reading into it, because we don't want to believe that, like every prophet in the Bible, most of them were married and had children before they became prophet. Why is it so hard to believe that Jesus was married? Who his wife was may be a bit of a mystery, but it's pretty clearly laid out in the scriptures that he has his bride coming with him. You can believe whatever you want. You can even believe that the bride is the church. It doesn't matter to me, because I'm not going to judge anything, because I'm human. I'm not capable of taking upon that judgment on what the scripture actually means. I mean, we have the scripture, but some of the areas in the scripture are so difficult to interpret because, like I said, it says in the Bible that Satan can appear as an angel of light, but it does not say in the Bible that he can appear as Jesus Christ and trick you with the cross. It does not say that. So when people come to me and say that I might have been tricked, like, how could I have been tricked when I was filled with unbelievable amounts of love and was taken into heaven? How is that a trick? And then when I met Satan, I'm pulled into the consciousness that causes judgment and war, because judgment is the inner conflict. See, if you get rid of the inner conflict over good and evil, you're peaceful. And if you're naturally non-judgmental and you're peaceful, how are you going to kill somebody, right? But if you judge somebody and you're trapped in the knowledge of good and evil, you might actually kill them. But God says, "Thou shalt not kill." Yet, and how come the priests are defiling our children? How can you do that when you see there's a conflict going on? So when the conflict is resolved, if thine eye be single, means there's no more conflict within. Your whole body will be filled with light. That's what it says. And that's how I understand it, because I'm experiencing it. Once the conflict is over, your body will be filled with light. There is no Republican and there is no Democrat. So anyway, have a good night, everybody. We'll see who wins this election, these midterms. I mean, it's all part of the passion play on the earth. And so have a great night. Thank you all for being here.
Good night, David.
Take care.
Take care. Bye, everyone. If you have questions or want to discuss further, feel free to reach out. I'm available.